It's a completely different story than to say Oak Hill, Finley Prep, things like that. So
Yeah, and and the lesson there is a great life lesson. Buyer beware. When people tell you things,
absolutely.
you have to consider the source. You have to weigh all options, and there's great transfers, not so great transfers, and then everything in between that you never know until it happens. And
Yeah,
And
so,
it's
Chad,
um,
yeah, James, yes, sir.
if you don't mind, one other point too, and Marcus was talking about this with the adults, but this has happened in the past that I've seen, but sometimes you may see a transfer occur because a kid may be in his junior year and he just committed to a school and it might be a pretty high major school, and that school may be sponsored by a certain shoe company. Say they're an Under Armour school, and he was going to a school was a Nike school. Well, you may see sometimes that player may transfer across town to a similar school academic situation and everything, but the other school, let's say, was an Under Armour school. So now he is affiliated with the same shoe company as his college is. So I have seen that in the past as well.
And that falls into the category of just something that's our day and age, but doesn't mean I have to like it. It just kind of just doesn't seem right for some reason. Now, another point before we move on that I'd say is I think it's significant that school basketball ends in February or March, early March, if a team goes really deep into the playoffs, and then AAU takes over, and all the way into August, the beginning of August, these players are with people other than their high school coach to a large extent. And maybe a break in June when they play summer league ball, things like that. But to a large extent, they're going out of town with people. You're staying in hotel rooms and getting meals and shoes and gear and all that. And I gotta believe that the timing of that, the fact that August ends and then everybody goes back to school, I think that's a coincidence that drives people away from high schools into new schools because of some of the people that are influencing them and things like that. So here's a question for you, Marcus. First of all, do you agree with that? Second of all, why is that the case? In my opinion, that's the case because a lot of these high school associations make a big mistake, in my opinion, because they restrict the coaches from being around the players for all that time. And so if you don't like some of the influences in AAU basketball or things like that, the best thing to do is have that trained professional, that educator, that high school basketball coach, not be prohibited from dealing with the player for the next 6, 7 months. And then in addition to that, you have NCAA rules that say, well, coaches can only watch players during 4 weekends or 5 weekends. And so the shoe companies and everybody try to jam all the evaluations into little periods of time. And then so what do you think about those points, Marcus?
You raise a really good point, and I know this is a slightly different topic, but it is important for people to understand when you talk about high-profile players, all the way down to guys who are just going for that college scholarship at the AAU level. When they go and play AAU, it is completely different than high school. I'll start off by saying that there are bad coaches in high school and there are bad coaches in AAU. There are more good coaches at the high school level, but there are good coaches at the AAU level. But you got to consider that in high school you're going to class all week, and then you're getting on a bus and you're riding maybe an hour at the most, hour and a half to play another school, and then you're back, and then you're going to school the next day. AAU is like being a semi-pro. These guys are traveling around the country together with their friends. They're seeing top players. Some of these guys go to events, and there's media guys like myself, like you. They're there. We see them, and it is a bonding experience for these guys. It is fun. I mean, it's just like us going on a vacation. Even a business trip is kind of a break. So all summer, these guys are with their AAU organizations. They're traveling. They're spending time together. Some of it is a lot of fun for these guys. I mean, they're not in school a lot of times, and to go back to school is a jolt. And so I think sometimes they feel like they've been talked to all summer by their AAU guy, and they have this good feeling, with the AAU. They're like, I wish I could do that all year because school is a drag, not for all players, but for some, they get back and it's a letdown. It's just like going on vacation and you're on a post-trip, depression kind of thing where you feel down. So I think that it would be better off if the high school coaches had a little bit more interaction with the players the rest of the year. I think It's kind of a disservice. The NCAA tries to make the high school games the best chance for coaches to see their players, but even at prep schools and everything, there's not a lot of college coaches that go to those games because you're going to see one player as opposed to AAU. You can go to the Peach Jam or the Peach State, and you can see 30 or 40 players in a day that you might recruit to your college. So,
that's right.
you know, it's all happening without much interaction from the high school coaches at all.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, when you boil all that down, that's one of the things that, you know, you might call an unintended consequence. I don't think anybody tries to set up the system that way, but I think that is a factor here. You know, what wouldn't it be a great world if the high school coaches could, you know, work with their players in the off season, and then the Nikes and the Under Armours of the world could fund those teams, and then those kids would have those great feelings about their high school, their hometown school, the kids they grow up with, their childhood friends, and they take all those good feelings through the spring, through the summer, and then they come back in September. Maybe now they're excited to go to school. Who knows? But, you know, that's probably a perfect world. Okay, so we're going to give, James, we're going to give you the last word on this transfer issue before we go to our last topic.
Okay, Chad, the only thing was you guys brought up the AAU scene, the guys traveling with each other all year and everything in the summer. And one thing not to overlook as well is when you get an AAU team with 4 or 5 different high schools together, and you may get 2 or 3 kids from each high school, sometimes what happens as well is kids recruit each other. So you get, you know, one high school, they may recruit another kid that they really like playing with, enjoy playing with, and they see he can help out their team next year. So you see that as well with the transfers.
Great point. I've read the most fascinating thing today, and that is when I looked at L.J. Peak from Gaffney, South Carolina, transferring to Whitney Young in Chicago. You know, I'm trying to figure out why. 2 things stood out. Number one, Jaleel Okafor and another big kid that's, you know, really a high-profile player play at Whitney Young. They'll go play now against Jabari Parker and Kendrick Nunn and these guys. Well, you know, who can blame LJ for wanting to be a part of that? The other point that came up that I read was his team, his Gaffney High School team, played Whitney Young at the Beach Ball Classic in Myrtle Beach last year, and LJ Peak scored 44 points. So not only do the AAU guys recruit each other, I'm sure that coach, well, I don't want to accuse him of recruiting, but, you know, it's a pretty good coincidence that LJ gave him 44 and now he's on the squad. So fascinating stuff. And oh, go ahead, James. You got one more?
Yeah, one more point to that, too. You're seeing in the NBA, the Miami Heat and all these teams forming their big threes and everybody joining up. The kids see that as well, I believe, and they want to do the same things, I think, at their high schools. And then you see it going into college, kids grouping up, saying, I'll commit here if you commit there. So it's happening. It's funneling from the NBA, I think, all the way down to the high school level where kids, you know, in an open enrollment type capacity, they could go to different high schools and they could group up and form super teams in essence.
Yeah, good point. Now, an old guy like me would say that the AAU scene has funneled into the NBA, but hey, we can go on and on. You know, that's probably age difference more than anything. Now, we want to tell you viewers to go check out netcastsports.com, a new website where we will be broadcasting games and highlights and having news and information about the best basketball in the Southeast and beyond all high school season. We will broadcast and cover the best games throughout Georgia, throughout North Carolina, throughout South Carolina, even have some things like Oak Hill and some of the nation's powers. We're very excited about it. Go to netcastsports.com to check it out and follow us on Twitter at NetcastSports. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week on The Hoop Show.